So, back in Generation 7 Inu, Passimian was regarded as potentially the best Pokemon in the tier, really only being rivaled by Incineroar, who currently sits as the definitive best one in the tier. But at the time, Passimian held a ton of value for a multitude of reasons. And nowadays, not only in current generation Inu, not only in last generation Inu, but also in Sun and Moon Inu, Passimian has taken a notable hit to its viability, and we're going to talk about why that is now through all three generations. So, if you enjoy this kind of content, make sure that you do subscribe if you're not already subscribed. We are so close. We're like 100 subscribers away from 4K. So if everyone watching this video subscribes, we will just easily get to 4,000 subscribers, and then we continue on to 5K. I think that's a great idea. So, we're going to first talk about the sets. And one constant that will exist is that Scarf Passimian is the relevant one. As we go through the generations, this set will always be important. The other sets will not really exist, and by other sets, I mean this. This is really the only generation where you see a consistent, I don't even say duality of set, just like consistent set versatility, I guess? Because while there are other Passimian sets that exist, like in Gen 8, there's Band, you could run Protective Pads. And in Gen 9, there is some like bulky stuff you can do with Bulk Up. It's just not common enough to warrant discussion. So we're going to limit it to Scarf in later gens. I do want to shout out Bulk Up Passimian though in Gen 7 specifically. Okay, so Scarf Passimian, why is it so good? Because roll compression is always king. And SM Inu is a bit dominated by balance builds and bulky offense. So, what do these two teams desire? Well, Balance loves roll compression because it gives you a bit more leeway and leverage with your other slots. If you've got a Passimian on your team, you have Speed Control, that's 1. You have U-Turn, that's 2. You have Knockoff, that's 3. And yes, those moves are relevant enough to mention as rolls. Pivoting's incredible, and item displacement's always good for making passive damage stick through Stealth Rock. And 4, you've got a really, really good offensive check to many of the most problematic ones in the tier. If we just look through the tier list real quick, not even the tier list, the team builder, for problematic offensive ones that Passimian helps soft check, you've got Aerodactyl, because you switch it on Stone Edge and you bonk it with CC. Delphox, because you could revenge kill it with Earthquake. Heliolisk is kept in check by close combat. Incineroar is bopped by CC while also being pivoted in on if it goes for Knock. That also goes for Pangoro. Not Seismitoad. Sceptile is easily CC'd. Dragon Dance Scrafty, and even Bulk Up Scrafty are victim to CC so long as there's no Choppleberry. Even something like Sigilif, if it's running a more offensive set, is vulnerable to knockoff. And in Schneasel, hey, I got a CC for you as well. And this moveset even has a little bit of versatility to it. So like Gunk Shot can be run. It gives you coverage for the, admittedly few fairy types in the tier. But an important calc is Passimian actually tanks a Draining Kiss from Comfy. It's only an unboosted Draining Kiss, mind you. So once that Columbine's up, you are revenge killed. But if Passimian gets an ideal 1v1 versus Comfy, where the Comfy's unboosted and the Passimian is, at or near full, you can actually win the exchange, which is pretty interesting. And then of course, one other option is Rock Slide. This keeps your coverage for Delphox, but more importantly, it lets you take on Golbat a lot more successfully. So you get a knockoff going on it, and then you can just hit it with some rocks, and you will two-shot it after a Violite is taken out. You might even two-shot it with Stealth Rock up, but I'd have to remind myself of the calc. So great, we know why this set is super good now in Gen 7, or at least was at one point. Well, and also, before I get into why it's fallen off, talk about Passimian in not Passimian in Gen 8. No, we'll talk about Bulk Up. I'm so sorry. So, why does this set exist? Well, for starters, because people are naturally inclined to experiment with Pokemon. And Generations 7 and 9 have a lot of room for experimentation. Gen 7 has Z moves, that unlocks a lot of versatility, and of course Generation 9 has Terastallization, similarly unlocking a lot of versatility by allowing Pokemon to run sets that they probably wouldn't be able to otherwise, or just wouldn't have the same incentive to. So, Normalium Z Bulk Up Passimian, a big reason as well that this set works is it gives you a nice lure. So if you're able to pair Passimian on a team with, say, maybe a Rotom, or an Aerodactyl, you could get your speed control from another Pokemon, and freeing up Passimian to run a different set's really cool. It also means you switch into something like Incineroar's knockoff better, which is always appreciated. This set's cool because with Giga Impact boosted up by Normalium Z, you're able to take out things like Golbat a bit better. You could potentially pop a Weezing or a Garbodor as well with Breakneck Blitz after a bulk up. Very, very good. Some other options that we've seen. Rock Slide with Rockium Z. This is useful because it gives you a very easy way to take on, say, a Golbat. Also keeps you having coverage for Delphox, which is always good. Another option is Buginium Z. This is like the ultimate way to keep your set, obscured. Because now you still have your ability to pivot. You can still bluff Choice Scarf really effectively. And you also now have coverage for Slowking. So if I bulk up, I smash it in the face, and we're happy. And in a very similar set to this, but of course lacks the same kind of set obscuring, is if you go Grassium Seed with Seed Bomb. This is the same idea. It gives you a move to hit Slowking very, very hard with, but it gives you a little bit more damage by going Grassium Z's Seed Bomb. So why has Passimian fallen off in this gen? And this kind of will extend to later generations too. The biggest point in Passimian's not disservice, but the biggest point going against Passimian is the rise of other options for speed. And when we talk about other options, there's really one in particular. That's Aerodactyl. And I'm referencing my own post here because the VR needs to be updated for Sun and Moon. It's very similar to what other people have submitted, so, you know, bear with me. So if you look at what happened with Aerodactyl up here, you can see the reasoning for why Aerodactyl's rise has hurt Passimian a ton. I don't care about getting knocked. One, because I might have the Z Crystal anyway. But two, because my speed isn't linked to my item. Passimian is meant to be a nice soft check to Incineroar. It's kind of failing to do all of its other jobs, though, once it takes a knock. Aerodactyl, on the other hand, I can keep switching into Incineroar, and as long as I'm, you know, not getting KO'd, I retain my ability to revenge kill threats. So things like Sceptile, Delphox, Sigilif, I don't need a Scarf to outrun, so I don't care about taking Incineroar knockoffs. I can keep switching in, and I'm happy to. Passimian, and as you see here I talk about this, it needs the Scarf. It's not a strong revenge killer once Incineroar knocks it. And along with Aerodactyl's rise, we've also seen Togedemaru come up. There's a bit more practical use to its defensive utility than Passimian's. Because like I mentioned, it's the whole issue of knockoff. I get knocked, I lose so much of my kit and so much of my identity as a Pokemon. Whereas something like Togedemaru, well, I'm never even really in position to have that happen. I'm not switching into no knockoffs. I'm just here for a good time. I'm trying to dissuade Comfies from setting up with Calm Mind and going for game. I'm trying to hold maybe like Heliolisks and Sceptiles and Whimsicots in check a bit. It's a very straightforward Pokemon to use, and it's just very practical in the current metagame. The role is very easy to see. It's very hard for opposing mons to take full advantage of. And Passimian kind of just looks at what it wants to switch into and is like, wow, wouldn't it be a shame if I got hit by a move that I'm technically supposed to be a switch into? Now Gen 8 comes around, and again, this is where we really only care about Choice Scarf Passimian, because it's really the only relevant set. So, why has Passimian failed to really be very good in this gen? If you'll notice on the viability rankings thread, and I'm so sorry for how it looks, they did something weird when they made this hub thread. Passimian's only stuck at B+. Why is that? Well, one, let's go back up to here. There's a lot of competition. So what is Passimian? It is a kind of bulky, strong pivot that has some revenge killing promise to. Well, if you notice what's in S rank, there is a lawnmower named Rotom Cut. This Pokemon is the same idea. Not as bulky, mind you, but it's an incredible revenge killer. It's incredible pivot. Ground Valley, not as fast as Passimian, but it's an incredible pivot and has a lot more late game threat with Swords Dance. And then we can even talk like Talonflame could be thrown in there. Not a strong revenge killer, but just through Talonflame's speed alone, we have seen it able to limit a lot of Pokemon because it's so fast. And it has a pretty good utility move pool too, with Will-O-Wisp and Toxic just kind of dissuading certain mons, such as Aerodactyl, from trying to actually punish it, holding in check things like Toxicroak, Choice Mix Sylveon, even sometimes being used as a pivot into something like Copperajah, and you're like, yeah, go for that H-Slam. I might Flame Body Burn you. But probably the biggest issue for Passimian this game, or this generation, is, yeah, the fighting types in the tier are a lot better. And, like, you look at the VR here. There's only actually one other fighting type that's new in Sword and Shield, and that is Toxicroak. The problem is, Toxicroak happens to be incredible. Swords Dance Croak is, like, just about as close as you can get to unwallable without hitting unwallable territory. Like, you don't... When I say unwallable, I mean it is legitimately like it gets to +2. You do not have mons that switch into it and take hits. Mudsdale is O-code by +2 low kick from Life Orb, Toxicroak. Not all the time. It is a damage roll, and I think it depends a bit on EVs as well. But a lot of Mudsdale are not full defense. They'll have at least a little bit somewhere else. So it's a more attainable calc than you'd like. And Toxicroak also happens to just be better into a lot of the defensive cores. Passimian wants to, again, it needs to run a Scarf set to really be, like, to really have any sort of niche. Because then again, we go back to why it was so strong at one point in Sun and Moon and you, roll compression. All these traits are still real for it. It's still a kind of bulky mon that can pivot around certain Pokemon, take like one hit, force them out. But something like Toxicroak, it makes any other set so pointless to run. Why am I running Bulk Up Passimian when, one, I mean, I am just losing to a lot of other options in the tier like Sylveon, Talonflame, Mudsdale, Vileplume. There's just no reason. Well, I should use Toxicroak at that point. I'm a lot stronger off the rip because I, can hold a Life Orb very easily. I can justify Adamant. I have priority. I have better defensive utility. The big one being, yeah, so you see this mon Vaporeon? Yeah, having him on the hard wall, that is quite nice. Sucker Punch ended up being huge too because it's so much harder to revenge kill me if I'm using Toxicroak. Passimian's pretty slow. And there's no Trailblaze in this gen, so I don't even have to worry about that. But hell, even Croak checking Vileplume's huge. This mon's a huge threat too. Having something that could actually pivot into Plume and Swords Dance up, and just did use it as complete setup fodder? Very, very big. I think maybe the most profound issue against Passimian though, and this applies to Gen 9 too, CC spam late game is not as easy a win condition as it was at varying points in Sun and Moon and U. So if we look at the list of Pokemon that are ranked fairly high in this generation of Inyu, it's not even so much that there's a lot of resistances, although there are. So you got like Xatu, Starmie, Salazzle, Mantine, Toxicroak, Talon, Sylveon, Vileplume. These are all really, they're either really good or passable Passimian checks. It's not even so much that, it's just you get scouted around so easily because Protect is like on every team on multiple Pokemon, it feels like. So, for example, Stack Attacka could very easily have Protect. Sylveon, this one's a Wish Pass user, it has Protect. Mudsdale runs Protect a ton because you're trying to scout around Choice Scarf Rotom Mow. Something like, let me get to another mon, Vaporeon, it'll have Protect. Escavalier, it might have Protect. I mean, we could even go down to here. Quagsire can run Protect even. Gunfisk, it can run Protect if it needs to. It's just so much harder to ever want to lock into CC. Because your opponent knows if you're going to go for it, and they just have the easiest means of scouting you out and bringing in the appropriate threat. And Passimian's tools that it offers are not enough to make up for that. And we really want to show, too, the CC switch-ins. I mean, again, you're not breaking Plume. You're not breaking Sylveon. Talonflame, you want to CC me? You want to risk taking that Flame Body? You want to let things like Mantine just switch in and defog? Or Starmie and Lazzle switch in and do whatever? So Lazzle, in Passimian's defense, that mon ain't taking CC very well. But if it's at full, all you need to do is take one and then revenge kill the Passimian. Guzzlord also, by the way, another mon that just runs Protect, and, you know, conveniently, it's something you'd maybe want to actually try and tap. And you can't do that once it scouts you out. So there's just a lot of notable issues with it. Also, I mean, I didn't even mention this, you see all the ghost types up here. By all of them, I think I mean 2, but there you go. 2 right there. I didn't even talk about, like, Weezing down here, where Weezing's, like, debatably a little underranked given how effective of a ground valley check it is. And we get to current Enu. And this last point, we talked about how CC spam is not really attainable late game. This kind of goes back to the very beginning, even, of Gen 9 Enu, where Sandaconda, I don't know why, I was one of the people shilling for it at the start. Eventually everyone else is like, yeah, I like this. Terra Ghost, I can have that in any Pokemon, and I can just decide you don't sweep anymore. Terra Poison, Terra Fairy, any Pokemon weak to fighting, very, very frequently, is gonna run a Terra type that is either resistant to or immune to fighting, and it just makes Passimian so much less adept at having that late game threat that it wants to have. Like, again, look, I'm just gonna keep it at high. Arboliva goes Terra Fairy. Blissey goes Fairy or Ghost. Copperajah, it can run Ghost, Poison, or Fairy. It's got a lot of options. The Dunsparce, almost always is Poison right now. Still can go Ghost. Gotta find more of them. Magneton, I've been spamming Fairy a ton right now. Earthworm, not only does it run Protect a ton, but it also goes Terra Poison a ton. I mean, even just certain walls, like again, we talk about Sandaconda, it'll go Terra Ghost. Quillfish even can go Terra Ghost. Like, you're already not super happy to face them. Quillfish, you're okay too. But even if you get Sandaconda in range of your Terra fighting close combat, you might not even KO, because it might just decide, oh, now I'm Ghost. I mean, it's so tough that Passimian's kind of just electing to go Terra Dark at this point, because you'd rather have the little bit of counterplay versus certain Terras. You'd rather get that strong knockoff. You'd rather be able to flip the script on Bruxish, which is, frankly, the best physical Scarf in this tier at this point. I mean, and again, we can talk about, again, other pivot competition. Rotomo remains better. Bruxish is better. Jolteon doesn't have to lock into a move to be super fast. It's sort of the Aerodactyl, you could say, of this tier. Scyther, same story. Does not need to be Choice Scarf to be relatively fast. And pivot. And then God, do you want me to talk about the fighting types? How many are there in high tier? Other than Passimian, there's Yama 1, Heracross 2, Sneasel Hisui 3, Tauros Paldia Blaze 4, Toxicroak 5. I'm here to tell you right now, Passimian is probably 5th or 6th best out of those Pokemon. It feels like power creep is just caught up to Passimian at this point. And the metagames don't really favor Choice Scarf reliant revenge killers like they used to. Because, at least not ones that are so easy to revenge kill. Or not revenge kill, but so easy to wall the main revenge killing tool of. So that's kind of the fall of Passimian. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I hope you found it informative or useful in some way. Like I said at the beginning, if you did enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're not already subscribed. Comment down below what you liked, maybe any other Pokemon you'd like to see talked about. And I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.